Niagara Region. So we've talked tons about the number of sales and the number of new listings both being way down, upwards 40, 50, 60% in the heart of COVID. So that has come back to the surface. So total number of sales for June 2020 versus 2019, down 1% plus or minus. Total number of new listings for the month of June up 2%. And so that is interesting to see where that's sort of come back again in lockstep. Meanwhile, for Niagara, for the average sale price, we've set some records so far this year. June is on pace to blow those records out of the water at $532,000, which is an increase of 17%. Again, we're only 17 days through the month of June, so it'll be interesting to see. But given that the total number of sales aren't that far off last June, we can't use the, well, there's not that many sales to go into the data excuse. Year to date, average sale price for Niagara is sitting at $501,000, which is an increase of 11.3%. So contrary to people saying that the prices are stagnant or they're declining, it's actually up 11%. Meanwhile, again, total number of sales and total number of new listings down about 25%. Again, remember it was 50, 60% a couple months ago when you looked at 1 month over another. So year to date, it's slowly coming back as these sales volume numbers return to normal. It'll level out the whole year as we go. That's what we expect anyway. So anyway, that is Niagara Region. Good old St. Catharines. So St. Catharines is the #1 volume city in the Niagara region, so the most houses change hands in St. Catharines, and if there's one thing that these reports like is lots of data. So St. Catharines is good for that. Oddly enough, for the month of June 2020, the total number of sales in St. Catharines down 18%, 18.5%. Meanwhile, the number of new listings up 10%. So sales pull back a bit, listings pile on a little bit. It'll be interesting to see if that plays out in any way with pricing. That being said, the average sale price for the month of June 2020 up 12.4%. Yeah. So year to date, looking at St. Catharines, there, as we've talked about lots, the total number of sales, total number of new listings, way down back in March and April. Now it's still down year to date, 25, 28, 29%. But again, remember we were 50, 60% down. So as the year goes on and the numbers return to normal in terms of volume, then that huge dip we had is going to level off. Meanwhile, year to date for St. Catharines, average sale price at $458,000, an increase of about 10.5% year over year. So that supply thing is the big piece to watch. If inventory keeps building up, because St. Catharines again is one of the cities in Niagara where June 2020 is going to have, or it's on pace to have more new listings than June 2019, which is super interesting to watch as far as supply and demand goes. So that's St. Catharines. Number 2 in the Niagara region in terms of total number of homes sold in a given year is Niagara Falls. So June 2020 to 2019, very similar to St. Catharines, total number of sales down a notch, 2.5%. Meanwhile, the total number of new listings up 15.5%. Average sale price for June 2020 versus 2019 is the same as the year-to-date sale price, right around $470,000, up about 8.5% year over year for both June and for year-to-date for 2020, which is pretty impressive. Year-to-date, same thing as St. Catharines. The average sale price, the total number of sales and the total number of new listings still down, but not nearly down as much as it was a couple of months ago, because as the year goes on, the new volume or the new sales data is going to kick in, and it's going to level out that sort of huge trough we had and bring it back up to more normal numbers. But again, the big piece with Niagara Falls as well is to keep an eye out on that new listing inventory, and if it outpaces the demand, then all of a sudden you're going to see as a buyer, maybe you have 18 houses to choose from instead of 11 or 2. So interesting times to watch how that shakes out. All right, so that is Niagara Falls. Lovely Beamsville, just to our west, fronting onto Lake Ontario with views of the Toronto skyline, is an example of how a low volume city where there's not a lot of sales data can get pulled in all kinds of different directions. So the average sale price for the month of June 2020 is up over 40%, only 12 sales, 2 of those sales were over $1 million. So the average sale price, again, when you see those numbers, you think, holy cow, but you have to put it into context. New listings for the month of June down 29% for Beamsville. Sales really unchanged at 0.1% or something like that. So new listings for that month down. So let's pull it out to the whole year. Year to date for Beamsville, total number of new listings down 17.5%. Meanwhile, the total number of sales down 6.5%. So just like every other city in Niagara, both of those variables are down. Meanwhile, prices up about 24.5% year to date for Beamsville at just under 600,000. So again, will that new listing inventory pick up? It's not going to go from here to here because it's not a huge volume city to begin with, but it'll be interesting with with the month being down 29%, year to date down 17%, that's sort of an inverse of what we usually see. So will there be more homes kicking on the market? Like we've said with other cities, is it just going to be the spring market was here, but now it's going to be here? We will see, but we'll definitely keep an eye on that. But that's the latest for Beamsville. Similar to Beamsville, Jordan Vineland, really low volume number of sales on a given month or a year, so it's hard to put a huge amount of stock into a month over month look. For example, the month of June 2020, total number of sales and total number of new listings down 55 to 65%. There was only 3 sales so far in the month of June. I don't know what it is. The last couple of weeks of May had most of the sales volume for the month of May, so perhaps June's going to be the same. But anyway, with only 3 sales so far, it's hard to put a huge amount of weight into it. So let's look at the year-to-date report. You'll see the average sale price is up 12.5%, and like every other city in Niagara, total number of new listings down about 44%, and the total number of sales about 34%. So it's really an example of it depends what street you are, what neighborhood you're in, and your particular spot, as opposed to looking at Jordan Vineland as a whole, because it is so different, and with such little volume, you can't put a huge amount of weight into a quote-unquote market report without getting a little bit more into the weeds. But that being said, that is Jordan Vineland. When you're looking at Niagara-on-the-Lake, you really have to chop it up into its individual parts to get a really good handle on the market. Does an estate home on Queen Street relate to a semi in Niagara-on-the-Green? Does that relate to a century home in Queenston, to a townhome in Virgil? How's that? But that being said, Niagara-on-the-Lake as a whole, for the month of June, total number of new listings up 2%, total number of sales down about 12%. Meanwhile, the average sale price is up about 50%, 50, to $1.8 million. And again, more than half or just under half of June's sales so far have been over $1 million. So again, that's a bit unique. And because the buyer, similar to Fonthill, the buyer pool or the supply and demand dynamics of Niagara-on-the-Lake are fairly unique as far as Niagara goes. And I think one thing that's happened is you've seen a lot of people, there's some discretionary home buying that's going on out that way. So you might see some people that have held off, and you might see sort of, again, the spring market picked up and put over here. As a result, so far this year, for example, sales over $1 million in Niagara-on-the-Lake at 22. Meanwhile, at the first 6 months of 2019, there was 36 sales. But with almost half of June sales being over $1 million, is that going to pick up speed and catch up to 2019? Remains to be seen. Meanwhile, like every other city, year to date, Niagara-on-the-Lake, total number of new listings down 23%, total number of sales down 8%. Price again remaining more or less unchanged at just over $800,000. It's been sitting there more or less in that range for the last 3 years or so, after there was the big bump up 4 years ago. So again, the price can be so volatile, right, though, because you can have everything's going along fine, and then boom, a $3 million house sells and knocks the numbers all wacky. But that being said, that is Niagara-on-the-Lake. So let's talk about Thorold. Thorold has a lot of construction going on, as you probably know, all different segments of the city, and then all different types of new construction going on as well. So as a result, you can and probably should look at the numbers for Thorold with and without the new construction in the data, because there's not a huge amount of sales anyway. So you can have 5 new homes sell and throw the numbers a little bit wacky. If you're selling a home that's 35 years old, it might not relate in particular. So, for example, June 2020 versus 2019, the average sale price up 8% at $464,000. If you take the new builds in that data out, the average sale price is actually sitting around $435,000, relatively unchanged from June 2019. Meanwhile, total number of new listings down 11.5%, 12%, and then the total number of sales up 5%. But again, that's just the month of June. So let's pull it back and look at the year. Here, you'll see the total number of new listings down about 12.8% for the year, and total number of sales down about 5%. Now, about 1/4 of those sales so far in the year were new builds. So the average sale price at $470,000, up 10% year over year to 2019 year to date. But again, you take those new builds out, the average sale price is still sitting at about $455,000 year to date for Thorold with the new builds out. So it's pretty impressive. It's a really different market though. You have, you have different sales happening in the spring, early spring, late winter, where you'll have student home and rental home properties change hands, and that can feed one segment of the market. You can have a new release of a new subdivision. All kinds of different sort of pieces to the Thorold pie, but that is a quick look at it, and hopefully that helps. All right. So Fonthill, an interesting city, demographically, supply and demand, new construction, all those sort of pieces make it a bit of a unique animal. The total number of new listings for the month of June 2020 up about 50%, 50 from June 2019. Now, a lot of their new listing inventory tends to happen historically in March, April, May. So perhaps this huge amount in June is just people that were delaying until COVID relaxed a little bit. Meanwhile, the number of sales also up 20% for June 2020 versus 2019. Again, maybe that delayed piece there. And as a result, average sale price up 21% for the month of June at $762,000. Now, 1 month is really hard to put a lot of weight into, right? Especially in a city like Fonthill or a town like Fonthill where you don't have a huge number of sales happening, so the numbers can get pulled in all directions. So let's look at year to date right here. So you'll see the average the average sale price year to date is up about 15%, just over $700,000. Now, interestingly, for year to date, Fonthill actually had the highest decline in Niagara for the number of new listings, down 33% year to date. And then the same sort of thing happening, average number of sales down 15%. So similar to other cities, sales down, new listings down, price up. But that new listing inventory being so suppressed is really interesting to see how that's going to affect as we go through June, July, August. Will it be just taking the spring market from March, April, May and moving it to June, July, August like a lot of people expect? We don't know, but yeah, that's the story on Fonthill right now. So Welland, super interesting as far as sort of basic economics goes with the supply and demand side of things. So the month of June, as we all say, a month does not a market make, but you'll see in the month of June how the number of sales were up just over 11%, number of new listings down just under 15%, and then as a result, the average sale price up 28.2% to $455,000. Now again, it's just 1 month, but it's really interesting to see where that selection was down by so much, 28%, and meanwhile sales are booming away and prices up, because perhaps as a buyer, instead of wanting to have 7 options, you've only got 2, and then those 2 get an offer on it, and then you're off to the next one, right? So let's look at year to date, because that's really what will tell the better story. The city of Welland, second highest decline in new listings year to date in Niagara, behind Fonthill. 32% less listings so far this year. Couple that with total number of sales down 16%, so you have a bit of a disparity there, right? And look at that math. The difference between 16% and 31% is 14%. The average sale price is up 14% at $415,000 year to date for 2020. Here we are in the middle of June. So it's not always that mathematically clean, but again, like all other cities in Niagara, the total number of sales down, the total new listings down, the average sale price up. What's going to be really interesting to see over the next 60-90 days or so is the spring market. Is it just going to be picked up from March, April, May and put over here in June, July, August? So again, we'll keep watching the new listing inventory coupled with the sale inventory. So that's Welland. Another lower sales volume city, Port Colborne. Wainfleet, total number of new listings for the month of June down 23%, which is significant. Total number of sales up 2%. So again, that supply getting crunched, if that kept going that way, similar to Fort Erie, you'd have some trouble because you'd run out of stock. So the average sale price up 29% for the month of June 2020 versus 2019. So pulling back, let's look at larger data. You look year to date. Again, very much in line with everywhere else in Niagara. The total number of new listings down 25%. Total number of sales down 6%. The average sale price up year to date 24.3%, which is astonishing, really, at $445,000. So really compelling, interesting numbers happening all across Niagara, including down in the south between Fort Erie, Welland, down south Thorold, Port Colborne, Wainfleet, all that. Really good activity and good buzz happening. Where it's going to be really interesting to see is that new listing inventory. Is it going to start coming on or not? Because for the month of June to be down that much is it's surprising, to be honest with you, because many other areas we're starting to see that new listing inventory build as people are getting on board and getting their homes sold. So that's the update on Port Colborne so far here in 2020, middle of June. Let's talk about Fort Erie. So for the month of June, a very active month. Sales for the month of June 2020 versus 2019 up 35%. Meanwhile, the number of new listings down 2.4%. So, if that were to continue on a monthly basis, good luck, because you would be out of inventory, right? But 1 month is 1 month. Average sale price for the month of June up 27% at $463,000 for the month of June 2020 versus 2019. So let's look at the year to date. So like every other city, the total number of new listings down significantly, currently at 25%. Number of sales down about 13.5%. So with that, maintaining sort of a balance and maintaining some kind of order, the average sale price is up in Fort Erie. It's actually up 20% year to date, which is outrageous, at $455,000. So similar to other cities, is it just a delayed spring market that's happening? Again, with new listings being down 24% year to date, but only 2.5% for the month of June. If that continues on, will that supply pick up? All of a sudden buyers have more choices, and will that price increase sort of level off? It's tough to say. There's a lot of new builds going on in Fort Erie obviously as well. So really super interesting times for our neighbors down in the south. That's the scoop on Fort Erie so far.